Welcome to the Angels Win podcast with former Angels broadcaster Victor Rojas, featuring Geoff Stoddart and Chuck Richter. And now it's time to talk about some baseball. Victor, take it away.
It's time for the Angels Win podcast. This is episode number 10. I'm Victor Rojas along with Geoff Stoddart and Chuck Richter. So glad you could join us. And if this is your first time, you're glad you're here. I mean, glad you found us. You made it here. Pretty simple. We're on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, and of course on YouTube as well. And typically we talk about the Angel stuff that happened last week. Look ahead what happened or what's going to happen. I wish we could say what happened next week. And then we talk about a little bit of everything else. So it's free flowing, no script whatsoever. We drink on the air. And today I'm blessed to be drinking something new, guys. My daughter is a big Malibu rum fan. And so she came up with a new concoction. It's got Malibu rum strawberry flavor with coconut cream. And what was the other thing? A little bit of watermelon juice.
Nice.
I don't know if you can see this. A little frothy for my taste, but it tastes damn good.
What does she call it?
The Maddie.
The Maddie. Maddie's madness.
That's it. So like cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers to you.
What do you got Geoff?
Jeff, is that wine? Red wine?
Yeah, after last week, there's going to be a lot of whining today, so I went with this.
Well, I got a Bloody Mary. It was a bloodbath for the Rockies yesterday, but an overall crappy week for the Angels.
Stiff one, is it spicy? I'm not a margarita guy or a Bloody Mary person, but my wife likes both, and she likes them spicy.
Yeah, this is spicy. I got some really spicy smoked Cajun seasoning on the rim.
Nice.
And then inside I have my smoked bourbon black peppercorns. It's cool. Super good. Yeah.
Is that this week's sponsor? Sure. Let's just get that out of the way right now. All right.
No.
When are we getting our Duke bourbon?
Yeah,
all week I was waiting for my Amazon delivery guy to wait for the Duke bourbon. Look at him. You're just laughing. I'm serious.
It ain't coming from the Duke. It's coming from me if it's getting sent.
Oh, okay.
So it's slow mail. It'll get there.
Okay.
So, snail space. I like it. Well, if you'd like to sponsor the Angels Win podcast, we will absolutely love to have a sponsor.
Yes.
Especially if it pays.
Yes.
That's even better. Product.
Right.
That's nice. I've had some T-shirts sent my way, but right. I like the greenbacks. I want to make it rain. Mama wants me to make it rain.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Angels because we have to because it is an Angel-centric podcast. And I think Geoff, you had the over/under as to keep in mind it was a 5-game week because of the 2 off days on Monday and on Thursday. They had the Dodgers at Angel Stadium for 2 on Tuesday and Wednesday. Then went to Colorado, and I think you had the over/under at 4, if I'm not mistaken.
It was 4. Yeah,
4-1 would be, a split, and then a sweep.
Yep.
I think we would have taken 3 and 2. I don't think anybody would have anticipated what happened overall with a 1-4 record, which was just a dismal week. It was just an awful week in general from the perspective of the team. Now that being said, Halos are 42 and 37. The Rangers have kind of cooled off a little bit. Yep. So thankfully that 1-4 stretch came at a time where both the Rangers and the Astros kind of a little seesaw battle, going back and forth. Both teams have lost 2 in a row. So you picked up a game on Saturdays that the big Angels record is 25 runs, excuse me. And then you don't lose any ground because both the teams ahead of you lost as well. So as a matter of fact, everybody in the division lost on Sunday. So that's interesting. Seattle 9.5 back. The Angels and the Astros are 6 back with the Rangers still leading the way. What I can't believe is I was looking at the run differential. The Rangers are plus 152 on the season.
It's crazy.
That's insane. That is insane. I think they are, they're tops. And second best is Tampa Bay at 150.
Yeah.
And
That's
you got Atlanta at 107. And everybody else is not even close.
right.
I mean, I think that the next closest is the Angels at plus 40. No, Dodgers at plus 48, San Francisco plus 45, then the Angels at plus 41.
Well, they sure helped themselves with the run differential
Well, no doubt. No doubt.
Talk about padding stats on that.
I guess you could take 41, take out the 25. Actually, let's take out 20. Let's just say they would have scored 5 no matter what. So just back out 20. And then, of course, on Sunday, just a bad game of 4-3 loss at the hand of the Rockies. So, overall, it's not what you want. Now you've got a full week coming up. No off days. The All-Star game is upon us 2 weeks from Tuesday. Does that sound right?
Yes.
I think festivities start 2 weeks from today. As far as All-Star week up in Seattle. And obviously, you had some momentum going in episode 9 going into that week. And then all of a sudden you think, okay, split, take 2 of 3 at the very least and get out of Dodge and then go back home. And that's not how it played out. So I'll let you – I know everybody was very excited about the Saturday 25 runs. Those games you could throw out the window. It's just kind of like you take your – it's like when you're in school, right? Take out the highest score and take out the lowest score. And then those games happen. You end up losing games as well in that fashion. Not that grand fashion, but in that type of fashion. But you chuck those out the window, even though it's pretty and fun to watch. But overall, a bad week. And Jeff, I'll open it up to you. It's like if you're Phil Nevin and the Angels going into a 4-game series against the Chicago White Sox, and the White Sox, you just never know who's going to show up for them.
Right.
How are you feeling about your ball club going into Monday's contest at Angel Stadium?
I don't know that you can feel good coming off of this week, even with Saturday being out there. Because like you said, realistically, it's a throwaway game. It was a fun game to be at. Last week in the podcast, episode 9, we had kind of talked about our, some memories with our dads and Father's Day. And my dad was in Hawaii last week for Father's Day and got home yesterday, and I took him to the game last night. So it was a fun thing for us to be able to have another, memory that we could kind of, put up on the shelf of, wonderful Angels moments that we've seen. But in the, grand scheme of things for this season, nice, but ultimately it means absolutely nothing given the fact that you got swept in the 2-game series by the Dodgers, and you lost the weekend series to just a terrible Rockies team. Now, there's a lot of transactions that took place in the last 48 hours, or actually 3 days, and we'll talk about that later. So, I think given the new players that Phil has on the roster, new puzzle pieces to put in place. Maybe there's some optimism there, but boy, Chuck, I don't know how he could feel great coming off of what they just showed him over the last 6 days.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Jeff. Did it ever at any point last night just hit you and think like, man, it'd be nice if we could save a little bit of these runs for tomorrow?
Always works that way.
Yeah,
always works that way.
Gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah, those Dodger games were close. We lost them. They're unfortunate. Hitting with runners in scoring position outside of last night has still been a problem for the Angels too.
Some really good pitching performances in both those Dodger losses.
Right.
It was the bats that just never came to life.
In fact, I wanted to touch on that too, because I know there's plenty of room in this podcast for criticism of the club. But the Angels in their past 11 straight starts, their starting pitchers have allowed 3 earned runs or less. That's solid.
Yeah.
And that's been one of our main sticking points on this podcast is the starting pitching needs to improve for the Angels. Now, of course, the starting pitching has improved and the bats went completely impotent against the Dodgers. And, the timely hitting wasn't there today or on Friday. So, and then the bullpen, Chris Davinsky's been a guy that's just been really reliable, and he even has had a tough time of late. So, in your point, or you mentioned Phil Nevin earlier, and we'll get to the players that have been acquired. I think today, him putting in Luis Rengifo in a key spot, late in the game, the guy has just been putrid at the plate, just absolutely garbage. And I don't know why you wouldn't use that opportunity to put in Mike Moustakas, but I digress.
Yeah, a two-run deficit in the ninth inning. They get one in. You had runners at first and second with 2 outs, and Rengifo is the option, which it is a little bit mind-boggling. Unless Moustakas, I didn't see the post-game comments or questions, so I don't know if Moustakas wasn't available. But you would think that in that situation, that's what you are going for, is you want that veteran guy to come in and spark the team. I mean, that's what you want, and that's the whole idea. I think when you're looking at transactions, especially in season, getting a jump start of the trade deadline, that you are hoping that these moves spark the club and get some momentum going in the positive direction, where you can run off, 7 of 10, 8 of 11, whatever the case may be, going into the All-Star break. The All-Star break for me, like, you want momentum going into the All-Star break, but typically the All-Star break breaks up your momentum because it's 4 days off,
Right.
And so it sucks, but it at least gives you an opportunity to try to pick up some ground, both in the West and as well as the wild card. Because now the Angels, we did the last podcast on episode 9, the Angels were sitting within the wild card. Now they are looking up at the wild card with the Houston Astros. So plenty of baseball still left to be played. But I would have thought that Moustakas would have been the call in the 9th inning on Sunday, so that if he came through in the clutch and it's like, oh, there you go, pushing all the right buttons. You can write all these stories however you want them, because that's typically how they happen. But instead, we're sitting here talking about Luis Rengifo, he being the option, and he not getting the job done. So, which is unfortunate. We'll segue to the transactions of the last couple of days. And the first one was a trade with the New York Mets. And it was Eduardo Escobar, with Gio Urshela out and Anthony Rendon out. Urshela is going to be out for a time. Rendon, you just never know. Wasn't it last Tuesday that Rendon was supposedly, according to Phil Nevin, last weekend was going to be ready to go on Tuesday against the Dodgers? And here we are Sunday, still no show. But I guess you got to make sure that he's 100% healthy before he gets back into the lineup. But because of those injuries, and because of Rengifo's inability to get anything going, Jared Walsh was sent down, David Fletcher was brought up, and then obviously on Saturday, Mike Moustakas was traded from the Rockies to the Angels and was in uniform on Sunday for the finale. Moustakas, obviously a Southern California guy. Guy that was second overall pick. I think it was second overall pick.
Yeah.
Hit his first, if I remember correctly, first major league home run was at Angel Stadium.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then he hit the home run in the playoffs, the Royals and the Angels playoff series at Angel Stadium as well. So there's some connectivity there. But, look, I like the fact that Perry is getting out there now and making moves that benefit the club. I think those two guys, Escobar and Moustakas, cost the Angels, I think, 3 lower level pitching prospects. Mm-hmm. Everybody's a prospect in the minor leagues, by the way, so don't take that with a grain of salt when you say pitching prospect. And he's not touching any of the key pieces that you are building for the future on. Look, they're two guys. Do I like the move? Yeah, I like the move because he's being proactive, addressing a need. Escobar can play multiple positions. Moustakas, best position, probably batter's box, could play some first base. Anywhere else is probably a liability. He's certainly not the guy that he was when he came to the big leagues 10, 12 years ago with the Royals. And so I look at it from that standpoint. He's doing something now ahead of the trade deadline, and it shows the world that, hey, Perry's open for business. He's willing to make moves. And I'm sure he's going to be very calculated in whatever other moves he makes, whether it's bullpen or starting pitching, or whatever the case may be. But I look at these two moves as two veteran players that are nice players. Okay. Are they difference makers? No. Are they at the top of their, profession right now? No. Are they on the back nine of their career? Absolutely. But they've been around, right? They've got a lot of big league at-bats between the two of them. And that's why I think when you look at Sunday's game in the ninth inning, why wouldn't Moustakas be that guy? So Chuck, I'll open it to you with the fact that, Perry making the moves, which is great, providing the ammo, at least some additional ammo, veteran ammo to Phil Nevin and the coaching staff. And now making sure that these guys actually are able to produce in some fashion so that the Angels can get something going on the offensive side when they return home.
Yeah. And, I think that it sent a message to the clubhouse that Perry has their back, that he is all in this year. And that's got to be good for chemistry. I mean, with the players knowing that, hey, our GM is supporting our efforts to get to the playoffs this year. I mean, Escobar and Moustakas are really good additions for where the Angels are at, losing Urshela for the season. Rendon, you just don't know. He may come back. He may go back on again. I mean, so I think these are really two key pieces. And really, aside from today's loss, I think the Angels can actually feel pretty good with these key additions. I mean, Escobar played great this weekend, by the way, having Moustakas and then going into a homestand this week. I don't think they're going to feel too sour. I mean, Jeff and I most Angel fans are a little butthurt today, but I think the team in general is what we need to look at, right? I think that the team thinks that, hey, we got players in this clubhouse talent-wise, and even when we get Neto and Rendon back, depth-wise now, to really go far. In addition to what I mentioned earlier about how the starting pitching has now picked up, it's in also knowing that, Perry's just, he's not lackadaisical. He's on the phones. It. He's working it. So I can see a trade made for maybe another bullpen arm or two, maybe a starting pitcher before the deadline. So I think that goes to the confidence level of the players, and I think that'll carry over into the homestand, and I think that they'll have a better week coming ahead. Even though the Diamondbacks are a good team, and you mentioned earlier the White Sox, you're right. You just don't know because they still got talent on that team, both in the pitching staff and on the field. So,
when you talk about Moustakas and Escobar as key pieces, I mean, are you saying that just from the standpoint of their overall track record and what they've already accomplished at the big league level, or do you feel like, and I'm asking this question, are you saying that these guys are going to be big cogs for the Angels going forward? Because to me, they're just guys. Are they key pieces? I think they're instrumental to what the Angels are trying to do this year. I think they'll help. I just don't think they are the difference makers. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they catch fire, both guys, and they go off, and it turns out to be some of the greatest trades of all time. Typically, when you see these type of trades, there's a big kind of the arc goes upward real quick because of the adrenaline rush. It's a new city. It's now, for Escobar, he got out of the Mets situation, which is unraveling on a daily basis. For Moustakas, he's going back home. He gets out of Colorado. So I could see that. Now, the sustainability of possibility. Can you sustain that upward trajectory from a trade? I don't know that. It typically does not happen for veteran type players, especially role players, which I think is because when Urshela is back and Rendon are back, if they come back, and then Neto, those are the guys I think you're rolling with, are you not? Because the other two guys are those role players that you can get in the lineup on a daily basis, but at different spots. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
And Chuck, before you answer, there's one other piece that I think that we need to throw into that infield mix, which is the Angels sent Walsh down to AAA, and they brought up David Fletcher.
Right.
So David Fletcher is back now as well.
Right.
How long does that last? What are we looking at time-wise in that transaction? Because I may be wrong, but it wasn't this his last time to be able to go back and forth?
Well, no, they cut him from the 40-man.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So they took over his contract. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think you can at least hope to say that Neto will be back after the All-Star break. Oblique injuries are really weird. They can take a while. Urshela is gone for the whole year. You can just write him off unless the Angels get into the playoffs. I've heard good things about Logan O'Hoppe, that he's actually making tremendous progress where we may even see him in August. So then you got 3 hitting catchers. Wallach's been good. I mean, maybe Theis is in the mix for first base then after that. I just think that overall the depth is so much better. To answer your question though, Victor, are these guys main cogs? They'll have to be if Rendon can't stay on the field. They'll have to be. Urshela's out for the season. Who knows when Zach Neto is going to come back. So we're going to have to ride with Fletcher, who thankfully is up here after hitting the ball well in AAA over Andrew Velasquez, who's just a disaster at the plate. He's in that Rengifo conversation. I think Rengifo is going to be the next guy to go, honestly, and he doesn't have any minor league options, so they'd need to trade him or just outright release him. So
yeah, we mentioned the Walsh thing and the Fletcher thing, and I think when you make these moves and talking about Moustakas and Escobar, just thinking about the clubhouse side of things, right? Moustakas, is he a better option over Trey Cabbage? And I think the tendency, I would imagine, would be at this point, especially with O'Hoppe and Neto, although and Ben Joyce, you had good luck with those guys coming up early, that I would feel as an organization, you'd be like, all right, let's give Cabbage a shot, right? Because our track record this year has been pretty good. These guys that have come up, they haven't been overwhelmed. They've gotten the job done. All 3 guys are out right now because of injury. But besides that, why wouldn't you give someone like Cabbage? But I could see that in a veteran coaching staff like a Phil Nevin may want or may feel more comfortable from a lineup perspective, depth perspective, that I want to go with the surefire major leaguer, the guy who's got, especially now that we're going to the All-Star break, the ceremonial midway point, and then onward into a tough run on the schedule between now and the end of August with all the teams that are in the way there, that I'd probably, if I'm going to roll the dice, I'm going to roll the dice with guys that have big league experience. And if you have some other injuries, Moustakas goes down or whatever, then you could still bring up Cabbage and see what happens, right? But I can see that side of things as to why they went out and got not only Escobar, but then followed that up the next day with Moustakas.
And real quick, Jeff, before you chime in,
sure.
Both Moustakas and Escobar have been red hot of late. So you're not just getting guys just for their name. You're getting guys that have actually been contributing on the offensive side of the game for the past 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, but I hope that that's not the reason why they picked them up, right? Because it's a snapshot. It's a snapshot. You got to look at the ball. You got to take a look at the full body of work. I totally get what you're saying, and fans are going to get really excited, like, oh, we got these 2 guys that are red hot, and then come August 1st, and like, these guys have shit the bed. These guys suck. Why'd we trade for them? It's like you got to step off the ledge for a second, and not that way backwards. When you talk about some of these moves, but I get what you're saying. But fans tend to get a little geeked up about these type of moves.
I don't know them that well from a distance and what type of people or what type of character guys they are. Victor or Chuck, I don't know if you do. One of the things that we've talked about that maybe I'm the one that always keeps bringing up is, having that presence in the clubhouse, that, guy that's going to get in people's face. Do either of you know, are either of them that type of a character or personality that they, will drive or demand attention or push people to be better?
I think Moustakas could be that guy for sure. I think the way he's played the game, the way he carries himself, everything you heard out of Kansas City, that was the type of player that he is. Because I'm thinking back on those Royals teams. I mean, Hosmer really wasn't that guy. Gordon was a very quiet guy, good leader, no doubt about it, leader. But he wasn't that boisterous type of personality. Salvi was the fun guy, right? Lorenzo Cain was the same. Lorenzo, I could see being a guy in the clubhouse saying, hey, knock it off, let's get things going. But Moustakas, the way he played the game, has played the game throughout his career, and what he did in Kansas City with that, and at a young age, because that was a young nucleus for the Royals at that time, I think, to your point, stands out for me as someone that could. And when you get your time in the big leagues, yeah, it's a new team, but it's okay to, what do you care,
Sure.
right? Because at the end of the day, you're a free agent. You're going to walk. You don't lose anything. And if anything, at this stage of your career, you want to be known as the guy that, hey, you can bring into a clubhouse. He's going to demand attention. He's going to demand accountability, especially with young players. You're at that stage of your career for both guys, Escobar and Moustakas, to why not just go ahead and do that now, especially for a team that's got a chance to get into the postseason. Eduardo, I don't know about. I've heard great things about him, but from a clubhouse perspective, I don't know. Sometimes it's Latin guys in the clubhouse. I'm just trying to think with strong personalities that command presence and will stand up for everybody. Those guys are few and far between. They really are. Albert, obviously in St. Louis, maybe to a little extent in Anaheim, kind of butted heads a little bit with Torrey, because Torrey was that kind of guy. And I'm just thinking about, Jose Abreu in Chicago when he was with the White Sox. Because of his age, because of his experience, the Latin players gravitate towards him. The Latin players are always going to gravitate towards their, not leader, but the guy that's going to stand up for them. The Roberto Clemente, if you will, of the clubhouse for Latin players. It's always been that way. Now, whether that gentleman can step up and be the vocal voice for the entire team, there just hasn't been a whole lot of them. I think Jose probably was that guy in Chicago for sure. So Escobar is probably one of those guys that is not out in front, but because he has the experience, can lend a hand on certain things. Whereas Moustakas, to me, is a guy that is like, with his chaw in his mouth, he's not afraid to yell at you and spit at you at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing about Escobar. Great teammate, keeps the clubhouse light. All of his teammates loved him. So Wayne Randazzo, when he covered the Mets, had nothing but good things to say about Escobar from his time there. So yeah. I think there's two good guys, and you can mix and match. Moustakas, you mentioned earlier, he's not going to be a Gold Glover at third base or second base, but he can play those two positions. Mm-hmm. Escobar can play second base, and shortstop in a pinch. So these are good guys to have, even when you got Neto and Rendon back. So
and it didn't cost you a lot.
Yeah,
didn't cost you a lot. And I know there was someone last night on Twitter interacting with me that was talking about. I can't believe that the Angels are going all in this year when they might lose Shohei Ohtani and they might mortgage the future. I'm like, well, first of all, nobody's mortgaged anything. What are you like? Right. Who have the Angels traded away that is part of 24 and beyond? I mean, nobody. Mm-hmm. Can any of those three guys that got traded this weekend turn out to be something out of the blue? A Bieber type pitcher or something? Yeah, anything can happen.
Sure,
anything can happen with lower level guys. But I think when you get the opportunity, you have a void. You need to fill it. You can fill it with veteran guys, and it doesn't cost you a whole lot, I think that makes sense. I mean, that's and now you're dealing with a roster on the minor league side that has some depth. Maybe catching depth is probably still devoid of that, but aside from that, there's some pretty good players. That if you wanted to make a blockbuster, you could make a blockbuster. Where you could say that for the Angels, over the last several years, right? It would have to be a blockbuster of epic proportions where we're, given 5 guys or 6 guys to get one. Now you've got guys at the minor league level that have enough cachet and talent at the right age where it only takes 1 or 2, plus a couple of lower level guys in A-ball that could fill to get a big time, if it's a starter, if it's a big time closer, whatever the case may be, whatever your needs are at that time, which is something the Angels have not been able to do over the last several years. I mean, that's just my 2 cents on it. Let's talk about this upcoming week because we mentioned already the White Sox are coming to town to Angel Stadium for a 4-game series, and then you've got the surprise Arizona Diamondbacks that I said last week I should have placed a wager on because I was thinking about those guys being the sneaky good team that they turned out to be. They got a very good farm system, and those guys are sitting atop the National League West. Still a lot of baseball to be played, but they're at the start of this coming week. They sit atop the division, 2.5-game lead over the Dodgers and the Giants. I'll talk about the Diamondbacks. That's next weekend. The White Sox are 6 back, and they are 11 games under 500 at 34 and 45. Jeff, the Southsiders, are they going to wreak havoc at Angel Stadium?
It's if we were having this podcast last week and I was making the predictions on what we were going to do, we're going to easily take 3 out of 4. After the struggles that we just had this weekend against the Rockies, it's much harder to say.
Yeah.
That said, I still think we take 3 or 4 from them. I really do. I think that this is, with the movements that have been made, with the, I think that all of the pieces are there. They're just not firing at the same time. As we kind of mentioned before in the Dodgers series, fantastic pitching in those 2 games, just couldn't hit. Over the last 3 nights, really, in Colorado, they hit fine. Obviously, Saturday was off the charts and, big asterisk next to that one. But today was okay-ish.
Right.
Friday was okay-ish. They, if not for that grand slam in the bottom of the 8th inning, they probably walk away with the win there. I think it's about just putting it all together at the same time. So I'm setting it at 6 for next week, or I'm sorry, at 5. I think we take 3 from the White Sox, and then we got to take 2 from the Diamondbacks. You just have to. You're at home. You've got to make that happen, and you've got to, as you kind of talked about at the beginning of the podcast, the entire American League West has been down a bit over the last week to 10 days. So now's the time to strike because somebody's going to get hot. Yeah. So it might as well be us. And if it's somebody else too, we can't let them, start putting distance between us and them.
Chuck, are you a little surprised that the Angels are just 20-16 at home?
I don't know. Is there really a home field advantage? I mean,
I think there is.
Really?
I think so. As someone who traveled for 18 years, there's something about sleeping in your own bed. There's something about going to a familiar space. I think that there is. It hasn't necessarily worked out that well in Orange County for the Angels. But I think there is. I think it's important. I just always felt like you can get away playing 500 baseball on the road, kind of a flip them on a daily basis. And by the way, the Angels took 2 or 3 from the White Sox on the South Side earlier this year. But I always like seeing like a 750 baseball winning percentage at home. I mean, that to me is like what you're striving for. You should be able to come home and feel like you're just going to kick everyone's ass at home. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I guess so. Here's the thing about the White Sox. We're actually, the Angels are going to go up against their 4 best of the rotation. So it's going to be a challenge. And again, they still got guys. I mean, Roberts having an amazing season. I think today he notched I think he's got 20 home runs and 20 doubles already at this point of the season. Amazing center fielder defensively as well. You know, they got Eloy Jimenez. I mean, they got a good, the lineup's pretty good, you know.
They haven't done much, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. But it's not a walk in the park. So I would love Geoff to say, we're going to take 3 or 4, you know, that's what I'd love to see happen. But man, and then the Diamondbacks are tough. They're just tough.
That's going to be the toughest one. Right. I mean, but you've got to do it. Like at some point you need to start beating the good teams. And they showed that when they played, I'm blanking on who we played like 2 weeks ago that we had a good series. Oh, when they played the Rangers, they had, a good series. Right. That's when you have to execute, but you can't let off the gas then when you play a team like the Rockies. You've got to keep that sense of urgency and that momentum in order to push forward. So, will they win 5 over the next week? Stretch, but I think that has to be something that they strive for and that they make happen.
Was that a Freudian slip that you said stretch with the White Sox coming to town? Because that's an old Hawk Harrelson. Stretch! Get on back there! You can put it on the board! Yes! Yes!
Thank you for catching that. Yes, it was.
Yeah, I caught it.
But, hey, guys, we talked about this before, and, we talk about consistency. And I think that's the biggest thing with the Angels, right?
Yeah.
Consistently hitting with runners in scoring position. They haven't been able to do that. They kill the Red Sox. They sweep the Red Sox, right? And then they get their asses, handed to them by the Marlins right after that, right? I mean, they beat the Rangers, and then they're just completely limp-dicked against the freaking Dodgers. And it's just, I can't even, this team doesn't carry the momentum to the next game. It's just like last night. You knew they weren't going to score 20 plus runs today, but how about 5? Anyway,
right.
Did you just reference Limp Bizkit?
I'm not going to repeat what I said.
Yeah, this is a family show, Chuck.
I had no idea you were a big Fred Durst fan. Limp Bizkit, I love it. We're talking about the schedule for the Angels and how it certainly doesn't throttle down. After next weekend on with the Diamondbacks, then you go to San Diego for 3. You go to the Dodgers. That's how you end the ceremonial first half going into the All-Star break. Yep. Then you open up at home, 3 against the Astros, 3 against the Yankees, 3 against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Oh, by the way, the Pirates,
they're not a walk.
Sure, also having a very good season.
They're having I would call it an outlier season, but a very good season nonetheless. Then you go to Detroit, you go to Toronto for 3. Then you go to Atlanta, end of July, beginning of August. And then you go to Seattle comes home, the Giants and the Astros and the Rangers, the Rays, the Reds, the Mets, the Phillies. That takes you through August. Now, anything can happen for any of these teams, right? Because the Mets, Phillies, but, those 2 teams have a lot of experience. And maybe they're just playing because they know they could turn it on at any point in the second half, right? Mm-hmm. That is one hell of a schedule.
Right.
And I think that's why you're starting to see these moves now by pairing the Angels because they know what's upcoming. They obviously know what's upcoming, and you might as well, instead of getting in a bidding war for Mike Moustakas, you just took care of business, because those are the ones where you end up giving away kind of a prized A-ball guy. That's kind of he's a prized guy in your eyes, but not necessarily on the rankings. But those are the guys that end up being pretty good. And you look back on it too. Mike Clevenger. Remember Mike Clevenger? Originally an Angel. He got traded. Who was that trade for, by the way?
Oh, it's for a relief pitcher. Who was his name?
Vinny Pistano.
Yeah, Pistano. Yeah, exactly.
From Anaheim. Anaheim's own, right? I think he's from Anaheim. Yeah, Vinny Pistano. That didn't work out very well. And Clevenger ended up being a pretty good piece. Solid major leaguer up until the injuries and stuff like that. So, and I think that's where that's why I think the moves in general are smart, getting out in front of it, and see how things play out over the next couple of weeks. But it's a tough road for the St. Angels club, over the next several months, and plenty of baseball to be played. So,
there needs to be a little eye of the tiger with this team, guys. And Victor, I think it was the episode that Jeff wasn't on where we talked about like who is going to be the guy. I mean, there needs to be a little more passion. I mean, I see guys walk back to the dugout acting like, oh, I'm almost off the clock, after they strike out with the freaking bases juiced. And I'm like, if that's me, I'm throwing a tantrum. I'm pissed. Not a Patrick Sandoval tantrum where I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyway, but like like I'm pissed off breaking the bat over my freaking knee kind of tantrum. But these guys, I just don't see it. Can you do that, by the way?
Can you do that? Huh? Can you do that, by the way?
What's that?
Break a bat.
I haven't tried it, but I probably could. I'm not going to try it at home.
You should try it at home. Let's do it on the podcast.
Come on, we need content, Chuck.
Yeah,
let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Content creation.
I think
I'm going to find the weakest ass bat.
Balsa wood, just
balsa wood. That's awesome.
Chili Davis, man, he was good at that. Him and Bo Jackson.
Bo Jackson over his helmet.
That was, I think it was the anniversary last week of that. I was seeing that video on all of the social media channels.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Jeff, what do you got as far as the mailbag?
Well, let's see. So the mailbag was primarily about the transactions that we had this week. And I think that we hit on just about all of those. But one came in while we were recording from Terry in Sarasota.
Terry Smith, out of here.
He says, with the trade deadline a month away, do you see Joe Adell and or Trey Cabbage? My gosh, I can't read this. I need a bigger font. Trey Cabbage as pieces to move, or both? What do you think, guys? Maybe Chuck, I'll start with you. Is Joe or Trey on the block?
To Victor's earlier point, Trey Cabbage is a damn guy. I mean, he's got 21 home runs and has hit some of the longest home runs distance-wise in the minors. Forget even the minors, in the majors too. If you combine the distance, if you look at both distances, and he's got 21 stolen bases. This guy is.
Do you get extra points for distance? Do you get extra runs for that?
No, you don't. I'm just saying the guy can hit it out of any ballpark.
Let's not tout the stolen base thing, especially for a big man. With the new rules that are in place, stolen bases are like an afterthought nowadays.
Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying, Victor, is he's not a big. The guy is 6'2", 200 and some odd pounds, and he can steal 20 bags. I mean, he's athletic, right? He's not a station to station guy on the bases. So, man, if he could only play the outfield, defensively well, you could look at him as being maybe a replacement for Taylor Ward, who, I don't know about you guys, but he'll have a game here and there, but he's just kind of meh this season.
He's a guy.
It's unfortunate too. I don't know what's going on with him, and hopefully he can figure that out. But it's trial and error, right? You kind of have to run with him right now. But as far as Cabbage is concerned, or Joe Adell, look, anything is possible, right? For the right package, especially if it includes young, controllable talent, because you're not going to give away 6 years of a Joe Adell or Trey Cabbage. Really, Joe Adell is the prime target. If you're only getting somebody back for 2 years' time or whatever the case may be, I can't imagine you're going to soak up a big contract or anything like that either on something. Maybe, don't get me wrong, anything is possible. But a guy like Cabbage, and I'm not saying this is the case, but it's interesting how teams value their own players, right? Their own internal assessment of every player in their organization. And while Trey Cabbage, and again, my disclaimer is I'm not saying this is the case on Trey Cabbage. I'm saying in general, the mindset could be that Trey Cabbage has played himself into prospect status that has other teams really, really excited about and has other teams wanting or craving to add him as a potential piece for 24 or 25. And the same could be said that the Angels could be like, Trey Cabbage, nice player. Do we see him here as a key cog to 24, 25, 26? Maybe. And so that's where those trades come about, where you've already made the assessment on each of your guys of who you can live with and who you can live without. And it's an easy column. So if people start asking about this column of who you can live without, and you get a guy like a Trey Cabbage that's on there, obviously you play close to the vest and say, nah, Trey Cabbage, he's part of our future. We got to have a heck of a package. And that's how these bigger trades happen. And usually just kind of manifest themselves because someone really likes what you have. And for you, it's just kind of like, he's a piece. He's a very nice piece, but we've got X, Y, and Z behind him that we're really a lot hotter on. And so that'll be fun to watch. That'll be fun to watch as that plays out. And Trey was just an example because it was part of the question. It could take Kyrie Paris. It could be Kyrie, it could be Paris. It could be any prospect at the minor league level that you think is having a great year, that is highly elevated. Internally, obviously you're not going to share that information, but internally you could already have moved on in your mind and in your heart from that potential player as a future member of your organization. And those are the type of players you say, you know what, I'd be interested. Obviously you want the other team to say this to you. We would like this player, because the minute you bring that player up, it's what's wrong with them? Why don't you want them? You know what I mean? You start to really negate your value on that particular player.
And I'll say this too, Victor, the Angels really haven't had a guy in a trade. They may have had in the organization, when trying to put a package together, that in trade negotiations, there's always that one piece that you need to add to a package to seal the deal. Mm-hmm. I think Trey Cabbage is that guy where okay, we want Kyron Paris, we want Bachman, whatever. We want a couple of your top, 10 prospects, but we want a guy that can start right now. You don't have a place for him. He's killing it. Another guy that I would bring up is Jordan Adams, former first-round pick for the Angels. He's only 23, and in AAA, he's got 12 home runs. He's got 22 stolen bases. His on-base percentage is on the rise. He just led off today for the Bees, and he's another guy that you can value. You may even look at him with more value than a Joe Adell because he plays a superb outfield defense. Mm-hmm. And, maybe the power, which is coming, the stolen bases are there, the arm's there, everything's there. That's some guy that can continue to, get better. So
sure.
The Angels have some guys, to answer the question, to make a big, and to Victor's point, a bigger blockbuster type deal this season. Yep.
All right. One more. I'm going to wrap up here. We promised each other we would be mindful on time. So at yesterday's game, I had the pleasure of getting to go down onto the field before the game. And Chuck, thanks for making the call. That was really cool. And the Rockies were having some challenges in their baseball operations center getting badges printed, and there was a whole bunch of people waiting. And by the time we all got down onto the field, the Angels had just wrapped their batting practice, so we really didn't get to see it. But there was a young man that I got to meet, him and his family. His name is Timothy Daniels, and Timothy is fighting some health issues, and really wanted to see Mike Trout take batting practice. And unfortunately, by the time we got down there, Mike was already done and back in the locker room. But the Angels got him a signed Mike Trout jersey. Was really happy and excited about that. Got to meet his mom, Amanda. I didn't catch his dad's and his sister's name. His dad was rocking a Mark Trumbo shirt. They had driven up from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Nice.
Just a really cool family. And Timothy and Amanda and the rest of the family, I just want you to know we are all with you. We're praying for you guys. And Timothy, I've got some Angels Win stuff that I'm going to order and send your way. And you got this, buddy. So stay strong.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Jeff, thanks for sharing that, man. We really appreciate it. And it's awesome that the Angels stepped up and in the fashion that they did, especially with the jersey. They didn't have to do that. And I think that speaks volume to the guys that were on the ground there in Colorado to take the initiative and get that done. I think that's fantastic. I appreciate it. Gentlemen, another fantastic show. Episode 10 is in the books.
Well done.
Well done. This frothy thing is going down well.
Maddie's Madness.
Maddie's Madness. No milk mustaches, but it's good stuff. Another fantastic show. We thank everyone for listening and watching, and tell a friend. Why not? Right?
Yeah. Tell two.
Tell two or three. It's kind of like that Wella Balsam commercial back in the 70s, and so on and so on and so on. For Chuck Richter and Geoff Stoddart and Victor Ross, thanks for listening and watching the Angels Win podcast. We will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Angels Win podcast with Victor Rojas, Chuck Richter, and Geoff Stoddart. Go Halos and drive home safely.
Say goodbye.